Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick little walkthrough on kind of the Eververse process, how the store works, and just kind of all of the data that I've been logging. Um, Not sure if it'd be interesting to a lot of people, but I love this kind of stuff. So, if you played last season, you might have seen this spreadsheet. It's a rune list that I compiled of the different runes for the chalice. Uh, and I created this on day one, just going through the API and figuring out what runes go to what. So I figured I'd do the same thing for the Eververse store as well, going back all the way to when the game first launched. And this is kind of the first draft of that. The problem with it is that some items, like this one right here, um, their URLs never really stay the same. So if you were to go to this link, it 404s now. I think this is like a shader or something. Um, so on top of that, it didn't. You also lose a lot of the item data for the item. For example, this ship right here, you can't tell the name of the ship, the hash of the ship, and a bunch of different other properties. So visually, this was decent, but it didn't really work out that well. So, um, thanks to the very, very wonderful people at Destiny Sets, their code is open source. You can go to GitHub and download it. So I'm running a local version of this website on my machine. Um, and from there, I use websites like light.gg or the companion site to Destiny Sets, which is data.destinysets.com, to compile a bunch of different information. So, for example, you can use LightGG to search through all of the new items. You can filter um, up here in the just by the different item types, ghost shells, whatnot. And once you filter down into those different items, you can you now have a list of all of the new quote unquote items for that season. I can take all the hashes from here and I can compile them into a list, which you see on the right. And this list is what powers my local version of Destiny Sets. So, the first thing I do is I build all of the new Eververse items for the current season. So, this is the complete list of all of the new items. Um, and one of the ways that you can kind of tell if an item is new versus for Eververse, or if it is an item, say that you get somewhere else, is by looking at a property in the item called has a high res icon. So we can see the manifest file for each item here, and it's just a JSON object with all of the metadata about that object. And in the display properties, this ghost shell does not have a high res icon, and that is because it is not from the Eververse store. And the source of the object actually confirms that for us as well. This Scarlet Swarm shell, however, is attached to the Eververse store. And if we go in here, there's the high res icon property. Clicking on that will take us to this image, which is the image that they use in the Eververse store whenever an item is on sale for silver. So that nice little featured page gets this icon here. So that's kind of a brief overview of just compiling everything. And then once we have all the items, we have to take away the items that get sold for silver, and then we can split this list into two lists: items that will be sold for silver and items that will not be sold for silver. And the way we do that is to look at Tess's data. So you can do this too. So if we go to data.destinysets.com, this is a front end for the Destiny manifest file. So every object and item that exists within that file can be searched and viewed here. LightGG does the same thing. I just kind of prefer this site because it gives a lot more of the nitty-gritty right away. So if we do a search for Tess, we can find her vendor object right here. And if you click on that, we get her manifest JSON object. So this is everything about Tess. It's got images, logos, different things, but it also has categories. So all the vendors in Destiny have categories, and those categories are essentially buckets that hold different items as a way to kind of organize their inventories, because there are a lot of different items and a lot of different organizations for those items. So if we go over to the categories tab here, we can see a list of every category that Tess has. One thing to note is that they used to have titles. I don't know if you can see that right there. This is an older screenshot from last season. But I believe that the titles have been removed from the category at the manifest level. So you won't be able to see those titles. But if we go back to Tessa's inventory, we can kind of see the organization on her. There's some empty categories, and then we have the gifts for each season and event when you log in. There's some bundles. We've got an organized area for seasonal items here. The next is all the emotes, and then all the sparrows, and so on and so forth. So that way everything's very neat and organized. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we get her bounties, which no longer are in the game. And then we get this little section down here. This is the current Eververse store. These top couple sections here are the rotating display. So here's kind of an example of that. This is week 2. So this new finishing move image is actually an inventory item, and you can see that right here. There's that image. And these sections are what build up this featured image carousel. These top couple, I'm assuming, are probably Halloween related, or maybe even like a dungeon related, for like a special skin or something. But they're classified at the time of the making of this video. But they will be updated at some point in the future. And then right below that section, we get the slots that are used for silver. So I'm going to go back. This image here is the front page for week 1. And we can look and see that a lot of these items and images align to the first item in each one of these slots here. So the Undying Finisher bundle is the first item in this slot over here. So this area is for slot 1. If we look here, Law of Induction and Law of Induction is the first item here. And so on and so forth. Now, generally these have been in order for the past seasons. This season, things have been mixed up a little bit. So as you can see, this lander shell here is not in the slot that it's supposed to be, but instead in the slot afterwards. So what happened on week 1 was, instead of rendering each slot once, it rendered this last slot here twice for the Lander Shell and Blood Runner. And then this last sixth area is always going to be your nostalgic engram. So what that essentially means is that we can kind of do a couple things all at the same time. We can figure out the rotation for the silver and BrightDust items because we kind of know a pattern that they're going to be in. We know which items will be available for silver because all of the silver slots are right here communicated for us. And we know what all items are going to be available for BrightDust because the BrightDust slots are just below. So we'll kind of go through a couple more examples and move through because of different changes and caveats within this season. But that's kind of the main idea. So when you move on to week 2, you can remove the first item from each area that have already displayed. And when we go to week 2, we get almost the second item in every slot. So Fire Team Fire Up is that second item in the first slot, just like we would expect. Sky right here is second item. Great White, second item. And then Invasive Species is this first item because this slot right here was not used last week. And Lunar Shell is on sale because the Lander Shell and Blood Runner were both in week 1, which would make this the quote-unquote second item for that slot. And then with that kind of knowledge in hand, we also know that this third category right here has an extra item in it, which means at some point the same thing that happened in week 1 is going to happen in the future, where this slot will pick 2 items back to back and sell those for 1 week, while another slot kind of gets hidden away and ignored. And we can also tell kind of when Halloween's going to come up just by all the different Halloween items that show up and the classified items. Generally, during the events, all of the items that go on sale are all themed for that event. And we can also predict, say, the third week. So, just going off of this, our third week prediction should be spring showers here, big blind. Got I'm not even going to try and say that. We've got the refashioned shape because this slot wasn't used in the first week, so it's kind of offset. And then we have the Harper's Shell right here because it's the next one in line. And if we pull up an image of week 3, which is right here, we can confirm all of those items are exactly in the slots where they're supposed to be. And you can continue forward as well. So at the time of making this video, week 4 is the next week. So that would mean that Ninja Vanish, Bad Dog, this nice little ornament here, Joltnir Sparrow, and this Ghost Shell should be the next items for sale for silver. The only caveat to that is that Bungie can change all of this data whenever they want. So if they decide to fix some stuff, that might not work. And also, because this one slot here is offset, one of these slots could be potentially incorrect. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to kind of do a week-by-week breakdown like I did last season, because items have been shifted and moved around so much that I didn't want to put out this whole thing and have this shift basically throw off multiple weeks, especially when I don't know what week that shift's going to happen. So now let's kind of go down into the BrightDust section. So these first 2 items are slot right here, it renders this category with item 1 and then this category with item 2, just back to back. And then below that we have this little section here of shaders. So the way this section works is that it always pulls 2 items. So we get the Amethyst Veil and First Light, and you can see both of those right there. And if I switch over to week 2, then you'll see Atmospheric Glow and Royal Welcome, which you can see right there. So it always goes 2, 2, 2, 2. Next to that, we get a Transmat effect, and that comes from this category right here. This one's straightforward, just cycles through like normal. Below that are some Ghost Shells and Sparrows ships. That works the same way. So, for example, Kit Bash, we see there, and then we would see this B5 ship the following week. Same with the last slot as well. Right below that, we get into the back page of BrightDust, which I don't have an image for week 1, so I'm just going to use week 2 and week 3. But it all kind of works essentially the same. So these 2 consumable slots at the bottom are set up right here in this category. So the way it works is it will pick this item, and then this would be week 1, this would be week 2. And we can confirm that with the cup of tea that's right there, which would mean that week 3 is Happy Feet. And if we click this, there's week 3, Happy Feet. Moving down to this, we get the Tall Tail, which you can see right there, and then Invasive Species. So next week would be Blood Runner, so on and so forth. As you can see, some of these slots kind of have extras. They're not necessarily 10, which means that we might have, again, some shifting in the BrightDust section. So we can see here, this slot has 1 extra item, and this slot here has 1 less item. So there's a chance that this one will be rendered twice at some point. Below that, we start getting into this weird kind of shifting for items. This category right here, which would be the 4th item in the BrightDust list, actually controls this top slot and this bottom slot. So we can see Dream of a New World is that 4th item, and right next to that is this oiled shader, which is right below right here. So these 2 slots kind of control these 2 areas. And then we can confirm that as well if we look at this Mind Barge and Jungle Viper and go over to week 3. There is Mind Barge and Jungle Viper. So these 2 slots are controlled this way, and that cascades downward throughout the rest of the BrightDust items. So it's kind of hard to see from this screenshot because I own it, but this is the Insomnia weapon ornament right here. And right next to it is the Nightmare Emergence, and you can see these 2 items are next to each other. And then again, to confirm, week 3 would be Ronin, Harpy's Cry. And there's Ronin, and there's Harpy's Cry. This next section is what controls kind of the class armor, and this part threw me off for the first week. I have kind of like a preview, and I had the boots in there twice because I thought that this category worked kind of the same way, where you'd see Fell to Earth and then the shader. So this item and then this item. And it worked for week 1 because there was no armor items on sale for week 1. And then for week 2, I posted boots in this slot and this slot, and that turned out to be wrong. And the reason for that is that these boots are actually all rendered in this one slot. the only thing that determines which boots you see is the character class that you're logged in on. So I play a Titan, and you'll see the Titan boots right there. And if I were to log in on my Hunter, then you would see the Hunter boots instead. So that means for this category, we need to combine these 3 items and treat them as one. So then the next item would be the Sunrise, which you can see right there, fits in with kind of our little pattern. So week 3 would be this ornament and this shader. And if we go here, there's the ornament and there's the shader. So next week, the arms for the new set will show up. And in the bottom row, we'll see the vest poison shimmer shader. And that's kind of how it's planned currently. And then this last category here actually controls 3 of the different BrightDust areas. The first item in the list is the top, and then the next 2 are the last 2 items in the BrightDust section here. So we can see that with this 3 is 1 for week 3, there's 3 is 1, and then Coral Rabbit, only the finest. And then if we want, we can go back to week 2. So there's that, and then those 2. So essentially, these are pretty much in order. They've just been shifted around a whole bunch to kind of make it a little bit more confusing than it was last season. Because last season, it was exactly in order for every slot. And that's pretty much it. Just between this and a bunch of the other data, I was able to kind of compile this list and then split it up. So I have a silver only list. These are the items that do not show up in this BrightDust collection here. So basically, I just copied this list and removed any item that showed up for BrightDust. So for example, when I got here, I removed the boots, so on and so forth. And that leaves me with this little box here. And then on the flip side, if an item didn't exist, I would add it to this list. And this is all of the BrightDust items for the season that will go on sale for dust. And then I've also kind of been keeping track of all the new rotations just to have like a list. I've also been pushing forward on those a little bit as well, so you can kind of get an example of what next week's store might look like. Again, all subject to change. Some of these categories could rotate things out, or Bungie could update the game on Tuesday, and all of this is just different. But this is kind of the projection for the next week, and then you can do the same technique week for each week, and build out essentially the Eververse store for the whole season. And I've been slowly working on doing that for all the other seasons as well. So you'll be able to see what items were available for BrightDust, what items were only available for Silver or in an Engram, and then eventually maybe even compiling season to season, so you can see this item has never been sold for BrightDust ever, or this item is only Silver or what have you, just to kind of get a greater picture of all of the different Eververse items and kind of just stats about it. I think that's it. If you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at JpDeathBlade. I'll put a link down below. I'll try to answer any questions you might have, but that's pretty much how you can read the Eververse store and translate that into what her inventory will be week to week. Thanks.